The city of Seattle was cloaked in its usual winter gloom, a perpetual mist hanging in the air, dampening the streets and softening the skyline. Christmas lights twinkled through the fog, casting a muted glow over the quiet neighborhoods. In a modest house near Lake Union, Sam Baldwin was finishing up the last of the dishes, the rhythmic clinking of plates against the sink echoing through the silent kitchen. Sam's home was a testament to the life he had built with his late wife, Maggie. Photographs of their travels, their laughter, and their shared moments adorned the walls, a gallery of memories that now seemed more like relics from a distant past. The Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, adorned with delicate ornaments, was a tradition Maggie had cherished. Sam had continued it for Jonah's sake, but the sight of it only deepened the ache in his heart. Jonah, a bright-eyed 8-year-old with an infectious enthusiasm, had retreated to his room earlier than usual. Sam had noticed his son's quiet demeanor, a stark contrast to his usual animated chatter. Jonah had been unusually preoccupied lately, a seriousness about him that Sam couldn't quite place. As Sam finished up in the kitchen, he felt the familiar pang of loneliness, the house echoing with the absence of Maggie's warmth. In his room, Jonah was sitting cross-legged on his bed, a transistor radio clutched in his hands. He had been listening intently to a program he had discovered, one that promised to make wishes come true. Tonight, the host, Dr. Marcia Fieldstone, was taking calls from listeners about their Christmas wishes. Jonah, with the determined focus that only a child can muster, had decided that this was his chance to make a difference. Jonah dialed the number, his heart pounding in his chest as he waited for the call to connect. The radio show had been a beacon of hope for him, a belief that maybe, just maybe, it could help his dad find happiness again. When the line finally connected, and he heard the friendly voice of Dr. Fieldstone, Jonah took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hello, who's this?" Dr. Fieldstone's voice was warm and inviting, a reassuring presence that calmed Jonah's nerves. "Hi, my name is Jonah. I'm calling from Seattle," Jonah said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Well, hello, Jonah from Seattle. What can I do for you this Christmas Eve?" Dr. Fieldstone asked, her tone gentle and encouraging. Jonah took a moment to gather his thoughts before responding. "I want to talk about my dad. His name is Sam, and he's really sad. He misses my mom a lot, and I want him to be happy again. I think he needs someone to love." Dr. Fieldstone paused, sensing the weight of Jonah's words. "That's a very sweet and brave thing to do, Jonah. Can you tell me a little more about your dad?" Jonah's voice wavered slightly as he continued. "My mom died a year and a half ago, and my dad hasn't been the same since. He's a great dad, but he's lonely. He used to smile a lot more when my mom was here. I just want him to find someone who can make him happy." As Jonah spoke, his words traveled through the airwaves, reaching listeners across the country. One of those listeners was Annie Reed, who was driving back home from a family gathering in Baltimore. The sound of Jonah's voice caught her attention, and she turned up the volume, her curiosity piqued by the earnestness of his plea. In Seattle, Sam, unaware of Jonah's call, was folding laundry in the living room. The soft hum of the radio played in the background, a companion to the mundane tasks of the evening. He was startled when he heard Jonah's voice coming through the speakers, his son's familiar tone pulling him out of his thoughts. "Jonah? Sam muttered to himself, walking over to the radio. He listened, a mix of confusion and concern clouding his mind as he heard Jonah describe their life and his own sorrow. Dr. Fieldstone's voice brought him back to the present. "Jonah, it sounds like your dad is a very special person. How do you think we can help him find someone?" Jonah's response was simple and heartfelt. "I just want him to be happy again. Maybe if someone hears this and understands how great he is, they'll want to get to know him." Annie, now parked outside her apartment, sat in her car, captivated by the sincerity of Jonah's words. There was something about his innocence and the raw emotion behind his plea that resonated with her deeply. As she listened, she felt a stirring within her, a connection to this unseen boy and his grieving father that she couldn't quite explain. Back in Seattle, Sam was overwhelmed with a mix of pride and sadness. He hadn't realized how deeply Jonah had been affected by Maggie's death, nor had he understood the extent of his own sorrow until he heard it reflected in his son's voice. The call ended with Dr. Fieldstone promising to keep Jonah's wish in mind and sending out a heartfelt message to all her listeners. As the radio show moved on to other callers, Sam sat down on the edge of the sofa, his thoughts racing. He needed to talk to Jonah, to understand why he had called and to reassure him that they would be okay. But for now, he just sat there, the weight of the evening settling over him like a heavy blanket. Meanwhile, across the country, Annie Reed turned off her car's engine, Jonah's words echoing in her mind. She felt a sudden and inexplicable urge to do something, to reach out somehow. The story she had heard was more than just a radio call, it was a glimpse into the lives of two people who were struggling to find their way in a world without the person they loved most. Little did Annie know, this moment would set her on a path that would intertwine her life with that of Sam and Jonah, leading her to question her own choices and seek out a connection that defied distance and logic. The airwaves had carried Jonah's plea across the country, and in doing so, had ignited a spark that would soon grow into a flame, guiding her towards an uncertain but hopeful future. In the days following Jonah's call to the radio show, the Baldwin household buzzed with an undercurrent of unspoken emotions. Sam, still reeling from the public revelation of his grief, found himself grappling with a mixture of pride for his son's bravery and a profound sense of vulnerability. The call had opened a door he had long kept closed, and now, he had to navigate the murky waters of his own heart and the needs of his young son. On a gray Seattle morning, Sam decided it was time to talk to Jonah about the call. He found him in the living room, deeply engrossed in a jigsaw puzzle. Jonah's concentration was intense, a small furrow creasing his brow as he fitted pieces together. Sam took a deep breath and sat down next to him, unsure of how to begin the conversation. "Hey, buddy," Sam started, his voice gentle. "Can we talk for a minute?" Jonah looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Okay, Dad," he replied, setting down a puzzle piece. Sam searched for the right words, finally settling on honesty. "I heard you on the radio the other night. You talked about Mom and me." Jonah's eyes flickered with a hint of fear, but he nodded. "I just wanted to help, Dad. I want you to be happy." Sam's heart ached at his son's sincerity. "I know, Jonah, and I appreciate that. But talking about Mom and our feelings on the radio, it's not something I expected." Why did you feel like you needed to do that? Jonah shifted uncomfortably, picking at a loose thread on his sweater. I just thought, if someone out there knew how great you are, they'd want to meet you. I don't want you to be sad anymore. Sam's throat tightened. He reached out and pulled Jonah into a hug, holding him close. I'm sorry if I've made you worry, Jonah. Losing Mom has been really hard for both of us. But we're going to be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most. Jonah buried his face in Sam's shoulder, his small body trembling with suppressed emotion. I miss her so much, Dad. I miss her too, Sam whispered, his voice thick with grief. Every single day. But we'll get through this together, okay? Jonah nodded, his grip on Sam tightening. They stayed like that for a long moment, finding comfort in each other's presence. When they finally pulled apart, Sam felt a renewed sense of determination. He needed to be strong for Jonah, to find a way to heal and move forward, not just for himself, but for his son's sake. As Sam and Jonah navigated their way through the complexities of their grief, across the country, Annie Reed found herself increasingly preoccupied with thoughts of the Baldwin family. The call she had overheard had left a lasting impression on her, stirring a restlessness she couldn't quite shake. Her engagement to Walter, a man who represented stability and predictability, suddenly felt stifling, and she found herself questioning the path her life was on. Annie's job as a journalist often required her to seek out stories that would resonate with her readers, but Jonah's call had touched something deeper within her. It wasn't just a story, it was a real-life drama playing out in the lives of two people who had experienced profound loss. The idea of reaching out, of somehow connecting with Sam and Jonah, began to take root in her mind, though she had no idea how to act on it. One evening, as she sat at her desk, a cup of tea growing cold beside her, Annie found herself staring at the contact details for the radio show. The impulse to write to Dr. Fieldstone, to inquire about Jonah and his father, was strong, but she hesitated. What would she say? What right did she have to insert herself into their lives? The radio call had been a beacon in her otherwise ordinary existence, illuminating the parts of her heart she had long neglected. As she pondered her next move, her fiancé Walter entered the room, a puzzled expression on his face. Annie, are you okay? He asked, noticing her distracted demeanor. Annie looked up, forcing a smile. I'm fine, Walter. Just thinking about a story I'm working on. Walter nodded, accepting her explanation. You've been distant lately. Is everything all right? Annie sighed, unsure of how to articulate the turmoil within her. I'm just thinking about a lot of things. The holidays, work, us. Walter's brow furrowed. Us? Is there something wrong? Annie shook her head. No, not really. Just life, I guess. Sometimes I wonder if I'm where I'm supposed to be. Walter's expression softened, and he reached out to take her hand. Annie, we're building a life together. We've got plans, a future. Don't let a fleeting thought derail that. Annie nodded, though her heart wasn't entirely convinced. You're right, Walter. I'm just overthinking things. Walter squeezed her hand reassuringly before leaving the room, and Annie returned her gaze to the contact details on her desk. She knew she had to find a way to make sense of her feelings, to reconcile her yearning for something more with the life she had committed to with Walter. And somehow, Jonah's call seemed to hold the key to unlocking the answers she sought. The days passed, and the connection between Annie and the Baldwin family lingered in the back of her mind. She found herself tuning into the radio show more frequently, hoping for updates, but Jonah's call had been a singular event, leaving her with nothing but her own imagination and the fragments of his story. Back in Seattle, Sam and Jonah were slowly finding their footing again. The call had sparked difficult but necessary conversations between them, helping to bridge the gap that grief had created. Sam, determined to honor Jonah's wish for his happiness, began to consider the possibility of opening his heart again, though the idea still felt foreign and daunting. On a particularly dreary afternoon, Sam found himself browsing through a local bookstore, searching for a book on single parenting that a friend had recommended. As he wandered the aisles, his thoughts drifted to Maggie, and he felt a familiar pang of loss. He paused in front of a shelf lined with books about love and relationships, his eyes lingering on the titles that promised to mend broken hearts and find new beginnings. Sam's hand hovered over a book titled Love After Loss, Finding Joy Again. He hesitated, then picked it up, flipping through the pages. The words on the page seemed to speak directly to his soul, offering a glimmer of hope that perhaps, in time, he could find a way to heal and move forward. As he stood there, immersed in the book, a gentle tap on his shoulder pulled him back to reality. A woman with kind eyes and a warm smile stood behind him, holding a book of her own. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice you were looking at that book. It's a good one. Helped me a lot after I lost my husband." Sam blinked, momentarily taken aback by the unexpected interaction. "Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss." The woman nodded, a bittersweet expression on her face. "It's been a few years, but books like this help me find my way back to happiness. I hope it can do the same for you." Sam managed a small smile. "I appreciate that. It's been tough, but I'm trying to take things one day at a time." As the woman walked away, Sam clutched the book a little tighter, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to rebuild his life and honor Jonah's wish for his happiness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Sam felt a sense of possibility, a belief that the echoes of loss might one day lead him to a place of healing and new beginnings. With the book in hand, Sam made his way to the checkout counter, a small but significant step towards embracing the future. In Baltimore, Annie continued to grapple with her own uncertainties, unaware that her path would soon intersect with Sam's in a way that would change both of their lives forever. The airwaves that had carried Jonah's voice across the country had planted a seed of connection, and as the days unfolded, that connection would grow into something neither Sam nor Annie could have anticipated. Baltimore was a city steeped in history, its cobblestone streets and historic architecture echoing tales of the past. Annie Reed, navigating her way through these streets on a crisp winter morning, found herself lost in thought. The festive decorations lining the buildings did little to lift her spirits. The encounter with Jonah's call had left an indelible mark, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was teetering on the edge of a significant change. Annie's apartment, a cozy refuge filled with books, photographs, and mementos of her travels, felt more like a haven than ever before. She had always cherished her space, a sanctuary where she could retreat from the world and immerse herself in her writing. Yet now, the familiar comfort seemed to highlight the growing restlessness within her. The upcoming wedding with Walter loomed over her like an inevitable shadow. Walter was a kind man, stable and reliable, but Annie couldn't ignore the nagging doubt that had taken root in her heart. Their relationship, once a source of security and contentment, now felt suffocating, like a comfortable but ill-fitting suit. The dreams she had harbored as a young woman, of adventure, passion, and profound connection, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a life of predictable routine. Annie's career as a journalist had always been a source of pride. She loved uncovering stories, bringing light to hidden truths, and connecting with her readers through her words. But lately, even her work had lost its luster. The mundane articles about city events and lifestyle trends felt hollow, lacking the depth and meaning she craved. Jonah's call had ignited a spark within her, a desire to pursue something real, something that mattered. Sitting at her desk, Annie stared at her computer screen, a blank document taunting her. She was supposed to be working on an article about holiday traditions, but her mind kept wandering back to Sam and Jonah. The words she had heard on the radio replayed in her mind, and she found herself searching for a way to connect with them, to understand their story better. The idea of reaching out to Dr. Marcia Fieldstone still lingered, a tempting but uncertain path. The phone rang, pulling Annie out of her reverie. She glanced at the caller ID, Walter. A pang of guilt washed over her as she picked up the receiver, trying to muster enthusiasm. "Hey, Walter," she said, forcing a cheerful tone. "Hi, Annie." Walter's voice was warm but carried a hint of concern. "I've been thinking about you. You seemed a bit distant lately. Is everything okay?" Annie sighed inwardly. Walter's perceptiveness was both a blessing and a burden. "I'm fine, Walter. Just a lot on my mind with work and the holidays." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "I understand. But if something's bothering you, we should talk about it. I don't want you to feel like you have to go through things alone." Annie bit her lip, struggling to find the right words. "I know, Walter. I appreciate that. I think I need some time to figure things out. It's not about us, really. It's more about me and where I'm at." Walter's voice softened. "Take all the time you need, Annie. I'm here for you, whatever you decide." Annie felt a surge of affection for Walter's patience and understanding, but it was accompanied by a gnawing sense of inadequacy. How could she explain the yearning she felt, the inexplicable pull towards a life she couldn't fully articulate? She thanked Walter and ended the call, her thoughts a tangled mess of emotions. Determined to break free from her indecision, Annie grabbed her coat and headed out the door. The crisp air bit at her cheeks as she walked through the bustling streets, her mind racing with possibilities. She needed to make a decision, to take a step towards the life she envisioned. And that meant confronting the uncertainty and facing her fears head-on. Her feet carried her to the local library, a place she often visited for inspiration. The quiet, hallowed halls, lined with shelves of books, provided a refuge from the chaos of her thoughts. As she wandered through the aisles, Annie found herself drawn to the section on psychology and relationships. The titles ranged from practical advice to philosophical musings, and she picked up a book that promised to explore the intricacies of human connection. Finding a quiet corner, Annie settled into a comfortable chair and began to read. The book's insights into the complexities of love and loss resonated with her, echoing the themes she had sensed in Jonah's call. The words on the page spoke to the uncharted territories of the heart, the delicate dance between vulnerability and strength. As she absorbed the wisdom within, Annie felt a flicker of clarity. Her own heart's desires were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The afternoon light filtered through the library windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Annie closed the book, her mind clearer but her heart still heavy with questions. She had come to a realization: she needed to take action, to explore the path that Jonah's call had illuminated. It was time to reach out, to make a connection that might lead her to the answers she sought. Back at her apartment, Annie sat at her desk once more, the contact details for Dr. Marcia Fieldstone displayed prominently on her computer screen. With a deep breath, she composed an email, carefully crafting her words to convey her interest and concern without seeming intrusive. She explained how Jonah's call had touched her, and how she felt compelled to learn more about Sam and Jonah's story. As she hit send, a sense of anticipation mingled with anxiety. She had taken the first step, and now, she could only wait and see what the future held. The decision to reach out was a leap of faith, a move towards the life she envisioned but had yet to fully embrace. And as the days passed, Annie found herself both excited and terrified by the possibilities that lay ahead. Across the country in Seattle, Sam was also on a journey of self-discovery. The book he had purchased from the bookstore had become a nightly companion, offering insights and encouragement that helped him navigate the complexities of his emotions. He read about the experiences of others who had faced loss and found solace in their stories of resilience and hope. One evening, as he sat in his favorite armchair, the book open on his lap, Jonah wandered into the room, carrying a well-worn teddy bear that had been a gift from Maggie. Sam smiled at his son, the sight of the bear a poignant reminder of the love they had shared. "Dad, can I sit with you?" Jonah asked, his voice soft and tentative. "Of course, buddy," Sam replied, patting the space next to him on the chair. Jonah climbed up and nestled against his father, the teddy bear clutched tightly in his hands. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the warmth of the fire casting flickering shadows across the room. "Dad," Jonah began, his voice barely above a whisper, "do you think Mom is watching over us?" Sam's heart clenched at the question, the pain of loss still a raw wound. "I like to believe she is, Jonah. I think she's always with us, in our hearts and our memories." Jonah nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I miss her so much. Sometimes, I feel like if I think really hard, I can hear her voice." Sam hugged Jonah tightly, his own eyes misting over. "I miss her too, every day. But we have each other, and that's how we keep her memory alive." Jonah leaned into his father's embrace, finding comfort in the familiar scent and warmth. They stayed like that, finding solace in their shared grief and the unspoken bond that connected them. As the fire crackled softly and the night deepened, Sam felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that healing would be a long journey, but with Jonah by his side, he was determined to move forward. The book had given him hope, and Jonah's unwavering love had given him strength. Together, they would navigate the path ahead, guided by the memories of the past and the promise of a brighter future. In the coming days, the threads of fate that connected Annie, Sam, and Jonah would begin to weave a tapestry of hope and new beginnings. The airwaves that had carried Jonah's plea had set in motion a series of events that would bring them closer together, forging a bond that defied distance and time. As they each faced their own dilemmas and uncertainties, they would discover that sometimes, the most unexpected connections could lead to the most profound transformations. The email Annie had sent to Dr. Marcia Fieldstone hung in the air, a beacon of her hopes and fears. As days turned into a week, Annie found herself checking her inbox with growing anticipation. The silence was a reminder of the unpredictability of life and the uncertainty of reaching out to strangers across the vast expanse of the country. In Seattle, Sam and Jonah were finding a new rhythm in their lives. The conversation sparked by Jonah's call had brought them closer, and Sam felt a renewed sense of purpose. His evenings were often spent reading the book on finding joy after loss, and he had started to make small but significant changes in his routine. He began taking Jonah to the park more often, playing catch, and even started a new tradition of cooking Sunday breakfast together, a tradition Maggie had cherished. Jonah, buoyed by his father's efforts to heal, was thriving in his own way. He had become more open about his feelings, sharing memories of his mother and expressing his hopes for the future. Their bond, strengthened by their shared grief, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as Sam was tucking Jonah into bed, the boy looked up at him with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, do you think someone out there heard me on the radio and wants to be our friend?" Sam's heart tightened at the innocence and hope in Jonah's voice. "Maybe, Jonah. The world is full of people who care. You never know what might happen." Jonah nodded, his eyes drooping with the onset of sleep. "I hope so. I just want you to be happy, Dad." Sam kissed Jonah's forehead, a tender gesture filled with unspoken promises. "I'm working on it, buddy. I'm working on it." Meanwhile, in Baltimore, Annie's life continued to be a whirlwind of deadlines and social obligations. Her engagement to Walter was progressing with all the predictable milestones: meetings with the wedding planner, discussions about guest lists, and debates over flower arrangements. Yet, beneath the surface, Annie's heart was elsewhere, drawn to the unresolved questions and possibilities ignited by Jonah's call. It was during a particularly mundane meeting at work that Annie's phone buzzed with a new email notification. Glancing at the screen, her heart skipped a beat when she saw Dr. Marcia Fieldstone's name in the subject line. Excusing herself from the meeting, Annie hurried to her office, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the email. Dr. Fieldstone's response was warm and empathetic. She explained that she had received numerous inquiries about Jonah's call, and while she couldn't divulge personal information, she appreciated Annie's concern and offered to facilitate a connection if Sam and Jonah were open to it. The possibility of reaching out directly to them was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Annie knew she had to tread carefully, respecting their privacy while also honoring the undeniable pull she felt towards their story. With Dr. Fieldstone's support, Annie crafted a letter to Sam, explaining how Jonah's call had touched her and how she felt a deep connection to their journey. She shared her own experiences with loss and her yearning for a more meaningful connection. It was a letter filled with vulnerability and sincerity, a bridge across the vast expanse that separated them. Days passed as Annie waited for a response, the uncertainty a constant companion. She threw herself into her work, attending meetings, conducting interviews, and writing articles, but the anticipation lingered in the background, a quiet hum that never faded. Then, one evening, as she was preparing dinner, her phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Sam Baldwin. Annie's hands shook as she opened the message, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. Sam's response was cautious but open. He thanked her for her kind words and shared how Jonah's call had been a turning point for him and his son. He expressed his appreciation for her reaching out and suggested that they could continue the conversation if she felt it would be beneficial for both of them. Annie felt a surge of relief and hope. The door to a new possibility had been opened, and she was eager to see where it might lead. Over the next few weeks, she and Sam exchanged emails, gradually sharing more about their lives, their hopes, and their fears. The connection that had started as a distant echo over the radio waves began to take shape, bridging the gap between their separate worlds. As winter settled over Seattle and Baltimore, Annie and Sam found themselves drawn into a correspondence that felt both comforting and exhilarating. They shared stories of their loved ones, the small triumphs and challenges of their daily lives, and their dreams for the future. Annie discovered that Sam was not just a grieving widower but a man with a quiet strength and a deep capacity for love. Sam, in turn, found in Annie a kindred spirit, someone who understood his pain and offered a perspective that was both refreshing and grounding. Their emails became a lifeline, a thread of connection that brought warmth and light to the cold winter days. Annie's doubts about her future with Walter grew stronger, and she found herself questioning the path she had been on. The connection with Sam felt real and profound, a stark contrast to the predictability of her relationship with Walter. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt exchange with Sam, Annie sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands, and pondered her next steps. The pull towards Seattle was becoming undeniable, and she knew she couldn't ignore it much longer. Her engagement to Walter felt like a commitment to a life she no longer wanted, and she had to face the truth about her own heart. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Sam was also grappling with his emotions. The correspondence with Annie had opened his heart in ways he hadn't expected. He found himself looking forward to her emails, her insights, and her compassion. The idea of meeting her in person was both exciting and daunting, but he knew that it might be the next step in his journey towards healing. As the days grew shorter and the holiday season approached, both Annie and Sam felt the weight of their decisions pressing down on them. The connection they had forged across the miles had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, new beginnings were possible. In the quiet moments of the night, as the snow began to fall in gentle flakes outside their windows, Annie and Sam each made a decision that would shape their futures. Annie resolved to face her doubts and take a leap of faith towards the unknown, while Sam prepared to open his heart to the possibilities that lay ahead. The journey they were embarking on was filled with uncertainties, but it was also a journey of hope, courage, and the promise of a new beginning. The echoes of loss and the distance that had once separated them were now being replaced by a shared determination to embrace the future, no matter how uncertain it might be. The holiday season brought a whirlwind of activity and emotion for both Annie and Sam. In Baltimore, Annie's apartment was adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations, a cheerful facade that belied the turmoil within her. She had finally mustered the courage to have a candid conversation with Walter about her doubts and the growing distance between them. It was a cold December evening when Annie invited Walter over for dinner, her heart heavy with the weight of the impending conversation. She had spent hours rehearsing her words, trying to find a way to express her feelings without causing unnecessary pain. As she prepared their meal, her hands trembled, the uncertainty of the outcome looming over her like a dark cloud. Walter arrived with his usual warmth, bearing a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. His presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like a reminder of the life Annie was no longer sure she wanted. They sat down to dinner, making small talk about work and holiday plans, but the tension in the air was palpable. After the meal, as they settled on the couch with their glasses of wine, Annie took a deep breath and turned to Walter. "Walter, there's something I need to talk to you about." Walter's brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, Annie? You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" Annie set her wine glass down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, about us, about the future. And I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, for marriage, for everything we've planned." Walter's eyes widened in surprise and hurt. "What do you mean, Annie? We've been planning this for months. What's changed?" Annie struggled to find the right words. "It's not about you, Walter. You're wonderful, and you've been nothing but supportive. But I've been feeling this restlessness, this sense that something's missing. And I can't ignore it anymore." Walter's expression softened, though his eyes were still clouded with confusion. "Annie, if there's something you need, we can work on it together. We've always been able to talk things through." Annie shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not that simple. I've been connecting with someone else, someone who's made me realize that I need to be honest with myself about what I want. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not." Walter's face fell, the weight of her words sinking in. "Someone else? Are you saying you want to be with him instead of me?" Annie's heart ached at the pain in Walter's voice. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I need to figure out who I am and what I want. I need time to explore this connection and see where it leads. I'm so sorry, Walter." Walter sat back, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I thought we were building a life together. I thought we had a future." Annie reached out to take his hand, her voice trembling. "I thought so too, but I've realized that I need to follow my heart, even if it leads me away from the plans we made. You deserve someone who's completely sure about being with you, and right now, I can't be that person." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words and shared pain. Walter finally nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "I understand, Annie. I wish you the best, and I hope you find what you're looking for." Annie hugged him tightly, her tears spilling over. "I'm so sorry, Walter. Thank you for everything." Walter held her for a long moment before gently pulling away. "Take care, Annie. I hope you find happiness." As Walter left, Annie felt a profound sense of loss and relief. The conversation had been one of the hardest things she had ever done, but it was also a necessary step towards embracing the future she envisioned. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was determined to follow her heart, wherever it might lead. In Seattle, Sam was also facing a pivotal moment in his journey. The emails with Annie had become a cherished part of his daily routine, a source of comfort and connection that had rekindled his hope for the future. He found himself looking forward to their conversations, each exchange revealing new facets of Annie's personality and her own struggles with love and loss. One evening, as he was preparing dinner for himself and Jonah, Sam's phone rang. It was an unexpected call from Dr. Marcia Fieldstone, her voice warm and friendly on the other end of the line. "Sam, I hope you don't mind me calling," Dr. Fieldstone began. "I wanted to check in and see how you and Jonah are doing." Sam smiled, grateful for her concern. "We're doing okay, Dr. Fieldstone. It's been a challenging time, but we're managing." "I'm glad to hear that," she replied. "I've been following your correspondence with Annie, and I wanted to offer some advice. It seems like you've both found a meaningful connection, and I think it might be time to consider meeting in person." Sam's heart skipped a beat at the suggestion. The idea of meeting Annie face to face had been on his mind, but he hadn't been sure how to broach the subject. "Do you think that's a good idea? We've only been emailing for a few weeks." Dr. Fieldstone's voice was gentle but encouraging. "I think it's worth exploring, Sam. You've both been through a lot, and sometimes, taking a leap of faith can lead to unexpected and wonderful outcomes. Just be honest with each other and take things at your own pace." Sam nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Thank you, Dr. Fieldstone. I'll talk to Annie about it." As he hung up the phone, Sam's mind raced with possibilities. The idea of meeting Annie in person was both thrilling and daunting, but he knew it was a step he needed to take. The connection they had forged was too important to ignore, and he was ready to see where it might lead. That evening, after putting Jonah to bed, Sam sat down at his computer and composed an email to Annie. He expressed his gratitude for their conversations and suggested that they consider meeting in person, perhaps during the holiday season. He knew it was a big step, but he also felt a sense of hope and anticipation. Annie's response, when it came, was filled with excitement and a touch of nervousness. She agreed that meeting in person could be a meaningful next step, and they began to make tentative plans to see each other over the holidays. The prospect of their meeting filled them both with a sense of possibility and hope, a chance to turn their virtual connection into something real and tangible. As the holiday season approached, both Annie and Sam found themselves on the brink of a new chapter in their lives. The journey they had embarked on, filled with uncertainty and courage, was leading them towards a future that held the promise of healing, love, and new beginnings. The echoes of loss that had once defined their lives were now being replaced by the sound of hope and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The snow in Seattle was a welcome sight, a soft blanket that covered the city and turned it into a winter wonderland. Sam Baldwin, bundled up in a warm coat, scarf, and gloves, navigated the snowy streets with a sense of anticipation and nervous excitement. He and Jonah were heading to the airport to pick up Annie, who was flying in from Baltimore for their long-awaited meeting. Jonah, skipping alongside his father, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you think she'll like us, Dad?" Sam smiled down at his son, his own nerves mirrored in Jonah's innocent question. "I think she'll like us just fine, Jonah. We've been talking for a while now, and she's looking forward to meeting us." The airport was bustling with holiday travelers, the air filled with the sound of announcements and the chatter of families reuniting. As they made their way to the arrivals area, Sam's heart raced with every step. The emails and phone calls with Annie had built a deep connection, but meeting her in person felt like a leap into the unknown. The flight from Baltimore arrived on time, and Sam scanned the crowd for a familiar face. He had seen pictures of Annie, but he knew that nothing could fully prepare him for the moment they would meet in person. Jonah stood on tiptoe, peering over the heads of the crowd, his excitement barely contained. "There she is!" Jonah exclaimed, pointing towards a woman with a suitcase in tow. Sam followed his son's gaze and saw Annie Reed for the first time. She was exactly as he had imagined, warm, approachable, with a spark in her eyes that spoke of intelligence and kindness. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal, and for a moment, the noise and chaos faded away, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of anticipation. Annie's heart raced as she spotted Sam and Jonah waiting for her. She had spent the flight trying to calm her nerves, rehearsing what she might say when she saw them. But now, standing just a few feet away, all her worries melted into a mixture of relief and joy. As she approached, Jonah ran forward, his face lit up with excitement. "Hi, Annie. We're so happy you're here." Annie knelt down to Jonah's level, her heart swelling with affection. "Hi, Jonah. I'm so happy to finally meet you." Sam, watching the interaction, felt a warmth spread through him. He stepped forward and extended his hand to Annie, his smile genuine and welcoming. "Annie, it's so good to see you." Annie took his hand, her grip firm but gentle. "It's good to see you too, Sam. Thank you for inviting me." The initial awkwardness quickly faded as they made their way to Sam's car, chatting about the flight and the weather. Jonah peppered Annie with questions, his curiosity and enthusiasm breaking the ice and making the conversation flow naturally. By the time they reached Sam's house, it felt as though they had known each other for much longer than just a few weeks of correspondence. The house was warm and inviting, decorated with Christmas lights and a beautifully adorned tree in the living room. Annie's heart ached with nostalgia and longing as she took in the festive atmosphere, reminded of her own childhood holidays and the sense of belonging she had once felt. The warmth of Sam's home, however, began to soothe those old aches, making her feel unexpectedly welcomed. "We'll get your bags upstairs," Sam said, leading Annie to the guest room. "I hope you'll be comfortable here." Annie smiled, touched by the care and thoughtfulness. "It's perfect, Sam. Thank you." As they settled in, Sam gave Annie a tour of the house, pointing out family photos and sharing stories about his life with Maggie and Jonah. Annie listened intently, her heart going out to the man who had faced so much loss but still found the strength to open his heart again. Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared memories, creating a sense of intimacy that both cherished. The evening passed in a blur of warmth and connection. They shared a meal together, Sam's cooking impressing Annie with its simple yet delicious flavors. Jonah, thrilled to have a guest, insisted on showing Annie his favorite books and toys, his youthful exuberance a bright spot in the gathering. As the night deepened, they settled by the fireplace with mugs of hot cocoa, the flickering flames casting a cozy glow over the room. Annie felt a sense of peace and belonging that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Sitting beside Sam, watching Jonah play with his toys, she realized how much she had been longing for a connection like this. The doubts and uncertainties that had plagued her began to fade, replaced by a growing certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the clock struck midnight, signaling the arrival of Christmas Eve, Jonah yawned and rubbed his eyes. Sam scooped him up, his voice gentle and soothing. "Time for bed, buddy. Santa's coming tonight, remember?" Jonah's eyes lit up with excitement. "I hope he brings me a new train set." Sam chuckled and carried Jonah upstairs, Annie following with a fond smile. She watched as Sam tucked Jonah in, the tenderness and love in his actions evident in every gesture. It was a sight that touched her deeply, a reminder of the simple joys and profound connections that made life worth living. Back downstairs, Sam and Annie sat by the fire, the silence between them comfortable and companionable. Annie's thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions, the reality of her situation settling in. She was far from home, with a man and his son she had only recently met, but it felt right, in a way that defied logic. Sam turned to her, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "I'm really glad you came, Annie. This feels special." Annie nodded, her voice soft but firm. "It does. I've been looking for something, and I think I've found it here." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, the connection between them growing stronger with each passing moment. The uncertainty of the future no longer seemed daunting, instead, it felt like an adventure waiting to unfold. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright in Seattle, the sunlight glinting off the snow-covered rooftops and casting a warm glow over the city. Sam, Annie, and Jonah woke early, the excitement of the holiday palpable in the air. The living room, filled with the soft light of the Christmas tree and the scent of fresh pine, was the perfect setting for a day of joy and celebration. Jonah, still in his pajamas, bounded down the stairs with a whoop of excitement. "It's Christmas! It's Christmas!" Sam and Annie followed, laughing at Jonah's exuberance. The sight of the presents under the tree, the stockings filled to the brim, and the festive decorations brought a surge of warmth and happiness. Annie felt a pang of nostalgia for her own childhood Christmases, but the joy of the present moment quickly overshadowed any lingering sadness. They gathered around the tree, Jonah's eyes wide with anticipation as he began to unwrap his gifts. The room filled with the sound of tearing paper, delighted exclamations, and the occasional bark of laughter as they exchanged presents and shared in the festive cheer. Annie had brought gifts for Sam and Jonah, small tokens of appreciation for their hospitality. She watched with a smile as Jonah unwrapped a book of adventure stories and a set of building blocks, his face lighting up with delight. Sam's gift was a beautifully crafted leather journal, a nod to his love of reading and writing, and he accepted it with a grateful smile. "You didn't have to get us anything, Annie," Sam said, touched by her thoughtfulness. "But thank you. These are wonderful." Annie blushed slightly, her heart swelling with affection. "I wanted to. You've both made me feel so welcome, and I wanted to give something back." The morning passed in a blur of laughter, storytelling, and shared moments. They played games, read books, and indulged in a feast of holiday treats that Sam had prepared. Annie marveled at the sense of family and connection that filled the room, a stark contrast to the loneliness and uncertainty she had felt just a few weeks ago. As the day wore on, they decided to take a walk through the snowy streets, the crisp air invigorating and refreshing. Sam and Annie strolled side by side, while Jonah ran ahead, his laughter echoing through the stillness of the snowy landscape. The city was quiet, its usual hustle and bustle replaced by the serene beauty of a white Christmas. Annie's heart felt light as they walked, her thoughts filled with the possibilities of the future. She had been searching for meaning, for a connection that went beyond the superficial, and she had found it here, in the most unexpected of places. The bond she felt with Sam and Jonah was growing stronger with each passing day, and she was eager to see where this new path might lead. That evening, they returned home, their cheeks flushed from the cold and their spirits high. Sam suggested they watch a Christmas movie together, and they settled on the couch, Jonah snuggled between them with a blanket and a bowl of popcorn. The warmth of the fire and the soft glow of the Christmas tree created a cozy, intimate atmosphere that wrapped them in a cocoon of comfort and contentment. As the movie played, Annie felt Sam's arm gently drape over her shoulders, a gesture that felt both natural and comforting. She leaned into him, her heart beating steadily as she savored the simple pleasure of being close to someone who understood and cared for her. Jonah, his eyes drooping with sleep, eventually drifted off, his head resting on Sam's lap. Sam smiled down at his son, then turned to Annie, his voice soft and filled with emotion. "This has been the best Christmas we've had in a long time. Thank you for being here, Annie." Annie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her heart full of gratitude and hope. "Thank you for inviting me, Sam. I feel like I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for." They shared a quiet, tender moment, the promise of a new beginning reflected in their eyes. The journey they had started, born from a simple radio call and a shared sense of loss, had brought them to this place of warmth and connection. The future was still uncertain, but they were facing it together, ready to embrace whatever came their way. The days following Christmas were filled with a sense of renewal and optimism for both Annie and Sam. The holiday had marked a turning point in their lives, a moment of clarity and connection that paved the way for new possibilities and deeper understanding. In Seattle, the city was slowly returning to its usual rhythm, the streets bustling with activity as people resumed their routines. For Sam and Annie, however, the days were anything but routine. They spent their time exploring the city, sharing meals, and deepening their bond through long conversations and shared experiences. One sunny afternoon, they decided to take Jonah to the Seattle Aquarium, a place he had been eager to visit for weeks. The anticipation in Jonah's eyes was infectious, and Annie found herself looking forward to the outing with genuine excitement. The aquarium was a marvel of aquatic wonders, its tanks and exhibits filled with vibrant marine life that captivated Jonah's attention. He pressed his face against the glass, his eyes wide with wonder as he watched the fish swim gracefully through their underwater world. Sam and Annie followed him from exhibit to exhibit, their laughter and smiles reflecting the joy of the experience. As they stood in front of a particularly mesmerizing display of jellyfish, Sam turned to Annie, his eyes filled with warmth. "This is nice. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed a day out like this." Annie smiled, her heart swelling with affection. "It is nice." Jonah's excitement is contagious. They watched as Jonah ran ahead to the next exhibit, his enthusiasm lighting up the room. Sam's gaze followed his son, a look of pride and love on his face. "He's been through a lot, but he's a resilient kid. I think he's happy to have you here, Annie." "I know I am." Annie's cheeks flushed with a mixture of happiness and shyness. "I'm happy to be here too, Sam. This feels right." As they continued their tour of the aquarium, Annie couldn't help but marvel at the sense of peace and contentment that had settled over her. The connection with Sam and Jonah, the simplicity of their time together, was everything she had been yearning for. The doubts and uncertainties that had once plagued her now seemed distant and insignificant. That evening, after returning home, they settled in for a quiet dinner. Jonah, exhausted from the day's adventures, fell asleep quickly, leaving Sam and Annie to enjoy a rare moment of solitude. The conversation flowed easily, their words weaving a tapestry of shared dreams and hopes for the future. Sam's eyes shone with a mixture of vulnerability and strength as he spoke. "Annie, I don't want to rush things, but I can't help feeling that this, us, is something special. I know we're still figuring things out, but I want you to know that I'm willing to take this journey with you, wherever it leads." Annie's heart soared at his words, her own feelings mirroring his. "I feel the same way, Sam. This connection we have, it's something I've been searching for, even if I didn't know it at first. I'm willing to take the leap too." They reached across the table, their hands meeting in a gentle, reassuring grip. The future was still unknown, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but the bond they had forged was a source of strength and hope. As the new year approached, Annie and Sam found themselves at a crossroads, their lives intertwined in ways they hadn't anticipated but eagerly embraced. The connection they had built, born from a simple radio call and nurtured through emails and phone calls, had blossomed into something real and profound. The question now was how to navigate the path forward, balancing their individual lives with the promise of a shared future. Annie, who had taken a leave of absence from her job in Baltimore, faced the challenge of deciding whether to return to her old life or to take a leap of faith and build a new one in Seattle. The thought of leaving behind her career and her familiar surroundings was daunting, but the pull towards Sam and Jonah was equally strong. One crisp morning, as they walked along the waterfront, the salty breeze ruffling their hair, Annie voiced her thoughts aloud. "Sam, I've been thinking about what's next for us. I love being here with you and Jonah, but I also have my life in Baltimore. I'm not sure how to balance everything." Sam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand, Annie. This isn't an easy decision. I want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you choose to go back to Baltimore, we can find a way to make this work, even if it means a long-distance relationship for a while." Annie appreciated his understanding and patience. "Thank you, Sam. That means a lot to me. I just need some time to figure things out." The days that followed were filled with reflection and introspection. Annie spent hours weighing the pros and cons, considering the impact on her career, her family, and her future with Sam and Jonah. The uncertainty was challenging, but she also felt a growing sense of clarity about what truly mattered to her. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Annie made a decision. She turned to Sam, her eyes filled with determination and hope. "I've made up my mind, Sam. I want to stay in Seattle. This is where I feel I belong, with you and Jonah. I'll find a way to make it work, even if it means starting over in my career." Sam's face lit up with a mixture of joy and relief. "Are you sure, Annie? That's a big step." Annie nodded, her voice steady and confident. "I'm sure. I've realized that what we have is worth taking a risk for. I want to build a life here, with you." They shared a moment of quiet celebration, the weight of uncertainty lifting from their shoulders. The future was still full of challenges, but they were ready to face them together, united in their commitment to each other and the new life they were building. As the New Year's Eve festivities approached, Sam and Annie made plans to celebrate with Jonah and a few close friends. The house was filled with laughter and joy as they welcomed the new year, toasting to new beginnings and the promise of a bright future. The clock struck midnight, signaling the arrival of a new year, and Sam pulled Annie into a tender embrace. "Happy New Year, Annie," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. Annie smiled, her heart full of love and hope. "Happy New Year, Sam. Here's to new beginnings." They shared a kiss, the promise of their shared future reflected in their eyes. The journey they had embarked on, filled with uncertainty and courage, had brought them to this moment of profound connection and hope. The path forward was still uncharted, but they were ready to face it together, confident in the strength of their love and the possibilities that lay ahead. The decision to stay in Seattle marked a new chapter in Annie's life, one filled with both challenges and opportunities. With Sam and Jonah by her side, she began the process of building a new life in a city that had quickly become her home. The transition was not without its difficulties, but the support and love she received from Sam and Jonah made every hurdle easier to overcome. Finding a new job in Seattle was a top priority for Annie, and she threw herself into the search with determination and optimism. The city's vibrant journalism scene offered numerous opportunities, and she was soon attending interviews and networking events, eager to establish herself in her new career. Sam, ever supportive, helped her navigate the local job market, offering advice and encouragement along the way. Their relationship continued to deepen, the bond they had forged growing stronger with each passing day. They spent their evenings talking about their dreams and aspirations, planning their future together and finding joy in the simple moments of everyday life. Annie's presence brought a new sense of warmth and stability to Sam and Jonah's home, creating a sense of family that was both comforting and inspiring. One sunny afternoon, as they strolled through Pike Place Market, enjoying the sights and sounds of the bustling marketplace, Sam turned to Annie with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking, Annie. We've come a long way since that first email, and I want to make sure you know how much you mean to me. I don't want to rush things, but I also want to be clear about my intentions." Annie's heart skipped a beat, her eyes meeting Sam's with a mixture of anticipation and love. "What do you mean, Sam?" Sam took her hand, his gaze steady and sincere. "I want to build a future with you, Annie. I know we're still figuring things out, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work. I love you." Annie felt a surge of emotion, her heart overflowing with gratitude and love. "I love you too, Sam. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." They shared a tender kiss, the bustling market fading into the background as they embraced the promise of their shared future. The journey they had started, filled with challenges and uncertainties, had brought them to this moment of profound connection and commitment. The path forward was still uncharted, but they were ready to face it together, confident in the strength of their love and the possibilities that lay ahead. The weeks that followed were filled with a sense of purpose and joy. Annie secured a position at a local newspaper, her talent and experience quickly making her a valued member of the team. Sam continued to thrive in his work, his renewed sense of hope and happiness evident in every aspect of his life. Their home, once a place of quiet reflection and healing, had become a vibrant, joyful haven, filled with laughter, love, and the promise of a bright future. Jonah, flourishing in the warmth and stability of their new family dynamic, brought joy and energy to their lives, his infectious enthusiasm a constant source of inspiration. As they navigated the challenges and triumphs of their new life together, Annie and Sam found strength in their shared commitment and love. The connection they had forged, built on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect, proved to be a source of resilience and hope, guiding them through the uncertainties of the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the city, Annie turned to Sam, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the fading light. "I'm so grateful for everything we've been through, Sam. It hasn't always been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." Sam smiled, his hand finding hers in a gesture of reassurance and love. "I feel the same way, Annie. Our journey has been filled with challenges, but it's also brought us to this place of love and connection. I wouldn't have it any other way." They shared a quiet moment of reflection, the future stretching out before them like a canvas waiting to be filled with the colors of their dreams and aspirations. The journey they had started, filled with uncertainty and courage, had brought them to this moment of profound connection and hope. The path forward was still uncharted, but they were ready to face it together, confident in the strength of their love and the possibilities that lay ahead. With the arrival of spring in Seattle, Annie and Sam found themselves embracing the rhythms of their new life together. The challenges they had faced in the early days of their relationship had given way to a sense of stability and purpose, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. The city, once a backdrop to their unfolding love story, had become a vibrant, integral part of their shared journey. Annie's new job at the local newspaper had quickly become a source of pride and fulfillment. She thrived in the dynamic environment, her passion for journalism rekindled by the opportunities and challenges of her new role. Her colleagues admired her dedication and talent, and she found herself forming new friendships and connections that enriched her life in Seattle. Sam, too, was flourishing in his work, his renewed sense of purpose and happiness evident in every aspect of his life. The architectural firm where he worked had recognized his contributions, offering him new projects and responsibilities that fueled his passion for design and creativity. His evenings, once filled with solitude and reflection, were now spent in the joyful company of Annie and Jonah, their home a haven of love and laughter. The three of them quickly settled into a comfortable routine, their days filled with the simple pleasures of family life. They explored the city together, visiting parks, museums, and local attractions, each outing a celebration of their shared connection and joy. Annie marveled at the sense of belonging and contentment that had settled over her, grateful for the love and support that surrounded her. One sunny weekend, they decided to take a trip to Mount Rainier National Park, eager to explore the natural beauty of the region. The drive through the scenic landscape, with its towering trees and breathtaking vistas, was a reminder of the adventure and discovery that awaited them in their new life. As they hiked along a winding trail, the fresh mountain air invigorating and refreshing, Jonah's laughter echoed through the trees. He ran ahead, his boundless energy and curiosity leading the way, while Sam and Annie followed, their hands intertwined as they marveled at the beauty of their surroundings. The trail led them to a picturesque meadow, the wildflowers in full bloom and the distant peaks of Mount Rainier providing a stunning backdrop. They spread out a blanket and enjoyed a picnic, the simple pleasures of food and conversation enhanced by the breathtaking scenery. Annie lay back on the blanket, her eyes closed as she soaked in the warmth of the sun and the sounds of nature. Sam, sitting beside her, watched her with a mixture of affection and admiration. "This is perfect," he said, his voice filled with contentment. "I can't imagine a better way to spend the day." Annie opened her eyes and smiled up at him. "I agree. It feels like everything has fallen into place." As the afternoon sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a golden glow over the landscape, they packed up their picnic and continued their hike. The trail led them to a viewpoint overlooking a shimmering lake, its surface reflecting the colors of the setting sun. They stood together, the beauty of the moment a reflection of the journey they had taken to reach this point. Back in Seattle, their lives continued to unfold in a tapestry of shared experiences and cherished moments. Annie's parents, who had initially been skeptical of her decision to move across the country, visited them and quickly fell in love with the city and the life Annie had built with Sam and Jonah. The visit was filled with laughter, stories, and the forging of new bonds, strengthening the sense of family and connection that surrounded them. As summer approached, Sam and Annie found themselves discussing their future with increasing frequency. They talked about their dreams and aspirations, the places they wanted to visit, and the goals they hoped to achieve together. The sense of partnership and mutual support that had characterized their relationship from the beginning was now a cornerstone of their shared life. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Sam turned to Annie, his eyes filled with a mixture of anticipation and love. "Annie, I've been thinking about our future. I know we've talked about a lot of things, but there's something I want to ask you." Annie's heart quickened, her eyes meeting Sam's with a mixture of curiosity and hope. "What is it, Sam?" Sam took a deep breath, his hand finding hers in a gesture of reassurance and love. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Annie. You've brought so much joy and meaning into my life, and I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Annie's eyes filled with tears, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "Yes, Sam. I would love to marry you." They shared a tender kiss, the promise of their shared future reflected in their eyes. The journey they had embarked on, filled with challenges and uncertainties, had brought them to this moment of profound commitment and joy. The path forward was still uncharted, but they were ready to face it together, confident in the strength of their love and the possibilities that lay ahead. The weeks leading up to Annie and Sam's wedding were filled with a whirlwind of excitement, preparation, and joy. The decision to marry had marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with the promise of love, commitment, and the building of a future together. Their wedding, planned with care and thoughtfulness, was to be a celebration of their journey in the love that had brought them together. They chose a beautiful venue overlooking Puget Sound, the panoramic views of the water and the distant mountains providing a stunning backdrop for their special day. As the days counted down to the wedding, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and happiness. Friends and family arrived from near and far to celebrate the union of Annie and Sam, bringing with them stories, laughter, and a palpable sense of joy. Annie and Sam had decided on a small, intimate wedding, inviting only their closest family and friends. This decision was a reflection of their journey, one that had been deeply personal and marked by genuine connections rather than grand displays. The simplicity of their plans underscored the sincerity of their commitment and the authenticity of their love. The preparations for the wedding were filled with a flurry of activities. Annie's parents arrived a week early, eager to help with the final arrangements and to spend time with their daughter and soon-to-be son-in-law. Their presence added a layer of warmth and support to the preparations, and Annie found comfort in their enthusiasm and love. Jonah, who was thrilled at the prospect of the wedding, was given the important role of ring bearer. He took his duties seriously, practicing his walk and ensuring that the rings were safely secured in their little velvet box. His excitement was infectious, adding a touch of lightheartedness to the preparations. The day before the wedding, the venue was transformed into a picturesque setting for the ceremony. Rows of white chairs were arranged facing the sweeping views of Puget Sound, and delicate floral arrangements adorned the aisles. The air was filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the soft hum of anticipation. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, Annie stood on the porch of the small cottage where she was getting ready. She gazed out at the tranquil scene, her heart brimming with a mixture of excitement and calm. The past months had been a whirlwind of change and growth, and this moment felt like the culmination of all the hope and love she had embraced since arriving in Seattle. Her maid of honor, her childhood friend Lisa, joined her on the porch, her eyes sparkling with joy. "You look beautiful, Annie. How are you feeling?" Annie turned to her, a radiant smile lighting up her face. "I'm feeling at peace. Everything just feels right." Lisa hugged her tightly, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm so happy for you. You and Sam are perfect together." Inside the cottage, Annie's mother was putting the finishing touches on her dress, smoothing out the delicate lace and adjusting the hem. The dress was a simple, elegant design, chosen for its timeless beauty rather than any adherence to trends. As Annie slipped into it, she felt a sense of timeless grace, the fabric hugging her form in a way that felt both comfortable and special. Her father, standing nearby with a proud smile, adjusted his tie and offered her his arm. "You ready, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Annie nodded, her eyes shimmering with happy tears. "I'm ready, Dad." As the time for the ceremony approached, guests began to take their seats, their conversations filled with anticipation and excitement. The setting sun bathed the venue in a warm, golden light, casting a magical glow over the gathering. Sam, standing at the front of the aisle with his best man, took a deep breath, his heart racing with a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. He looked out at the gathered friends and family, his gaze finally resting on Jonah, who was clutching the ring-bearer's pillow with a look of determined concentration. Sam smiled at his son, feeling a surge of pride and love, the music began to play, a soft, lilting melody that floated through the air. The guests turned in their seats, their faces lighting up with smiles as Annie appeared at the end of the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. She walked toward Sam with a serene grace, her eyes locked on his, the connection between them palpable. Sam's breath caught in his throat as he watched her approach, her beauty and poise taking his breath away. As she reached him, her father placed her hand in Sam's, his own eyes glistening with tears. Annie and Sam turned to face each other, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in unison. The officiant, a close friend who had known Sam for years, began the ceremony with a warm, heartfelt speech about love, commitment, and the journey that had brought Annie and Sam to this moment. His words were a testament to the bond they shared, the love that had grown from a simple radio call to a profound and enduring connection. Annie and Sam exchanged vows, their voices steady and filled with emotion. Each word was a promise, a declaration of their love and commitment to one another. The guests watched with tears in their eyes and smiles on their faces, moved by the sincerity and depth of the couple's vows. When it came time to exchange rings, Jonah stepped forward with a look of pride and responsibility, carefully presenting the rings to his father. Sam took the rings with a grateful smile, placing one on Annie's finger as she did the same for him. The simple bands were a symbol of their enduring love and the promise of a shared future. With the final words of the ceremony, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Sam and Annie shared their first kiss as a married couple. The guests erupted in applause, their cheers and laughter filling the air with joy. The reception that followed was a celebration of love, friendship, and family. The venue was transformed into a festive space, with twinkling lights, beautiful floral arrangements, and tables laden with delicious food. There were heartfelt toasts, laughter, and dancing, the atmosphere charged with the energy and happiness of the newlyweds and their guests. Annie and Sam shared their first dance as husband and wife to a soft, romantic melody that echoed through the evening air. They moved together with a grace and tenderness that spoke of their deep connection and love, their eyes never leaving each other's. The world seemed to fade away as they danced, their hearts beating in unison, their souls intertwined. As the night drew to a close, they stood together, surrounded by their friends and family, the twinkling lights casting a warm glow over the gathering. They looked out at the sea of smiling faces, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and joy. The journey they had embarked on, filled with challenges and uncertainties, had brought them to this moment of profound love and connection. They shared a quiet moment on the edge of the dance floor, their hands intertwined, their hearts full. "We did it," Sam whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "We're really here." Annie smiled, her eyes brimming with happy tears. "Yes, we did. And it's everything I ever dreamed of." As they embraced, the world around them seemed to fade into a soft blur, leaving only the warmth of their love and the promise of their shared future. The path forward was still uncharted, but they were ready to face it together, confident in the strength of their love and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. With the wedding behind them and the promise of a new life together ahead, Annie and Sam set out to create a home that reflected their shared dreams and aspirations. The process of building a life together was both exciting and challenging, filled with moments of joy and the occasional hurdle. But through it all, they remained committed to each other and to the vision of a future that was uniquely theirs. their first major decision as a married couple was to find a place that they could truly call their own. They spent weekends exploring neighborhoods in Seattle, visiting open houses, and imagining what their life would be like in each potential home. Jonah, who had taken a keen interest in the search, offered his own enthusiastic input, declaring certain houses perfect, based on the size of the backyard or the proximity to his favorite park. After weeks of searching, they found a charming craftsman-style house in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. The house, with its welcoming front porch, large windows, and cozy interior, felt like the perfect place to start their new life. It had a spacious backyard where Jonah could play, and enough room inside for Sam's architectural projects and Annie's writing nook. The moment they walked through the door, they knew it was meant to be their home. Moving in was an adventure in itself, filled with the chaos and excitement that comes with unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and discovering the quirks of a new house. Sam took charge of the heavy lifting, while Annie and Jonah focused on organizing and decorating. Each room gradually took on the warmth and character of their new family, filled with personal touches and cherished belongings. The kitchen quickly became the heart of their home, a place where they gathered to cook meals, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. Sam, who had a knack for culinary experiments, often took the lead in preparing dinners, while Annie and Jonah assisted, their laughter and banter filling the room with a sense of togetherness. The simple act of sharing a meal became a cherished ritual, a time to reconnect and celebrate the small joys of daily life. One evening, as they sat around the dining table, Annie looked around at her family, her heart swelling with a sense of fulfillment and contentment. "I love this," she said, her voice soft with emotion. "I love the life we're building together." Sam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Me too. It feels like everything has fallen into place." Their days were filled with the rhythms of family life, a blend of work, school, and play that brought them closer together. Annie continued to thrive in her job at the newspaper, her passion for storytelling and investigation fueling her creativity and drive. Sam, too, found fulfillment in his work, pouring his energy into architectural projects that challenged and inspired him. And Jonah, with his boundless energy and curiosity, brought laughter and joy to their home, his presence a constant reminder of the love and connection that bound them together. As they settled into their new life, Annie and Sam began to dream about the future, a future filled with possibilities and opportunities. They talked about traveling the world, exploring new cultures and landscapes, and exposing Jonah to the wonders of the world beyond their doorstep. They dreamed of growing old together, watching as their family expanded and evolved, their love deepening with each passing year. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the porch, watching Jonah play in the yard, Sam turned to Annie with a thoughtful expression. "Annie, I've been thinking. What do you say we take that trip we've been talking about? Just the three of us, exploring new places and making memories together." Annie's eyes lit up with excitement at the idea. "I love that idea, Sam. Where should we go?" Sam grinned, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "How about Europe? We could spend a few weeks traveling through Italy, France, maybe even Spain. It would be an adventure we'd never forget." Annie's heart raced at the thought of exploring Europe with her husband and son, the idea filling her with a sense of excitement and anticipation. "That sounds amazing," Sam. Let's do it." And so, they began to plan their European adventure, poring over maps and guidebooks, researching destinations and activities, and imagining the memories they would create together. They booked flights, reserved accommodations, and crafted an itinerary that balanced sightseeing with relaxation, adventure with tranquility. The day of their departure dawned bright and clear, the excitement in the air palpable as they packed their bags and set off for the airport. Jonah bounced with anticipation, his eyes wide with wonder at the prospect of exploring new places and experiencing new adventures. Annie and Sam exchanged smiles, their hearts full of love and gratitude for the journey they were about to embark on together. Their European adventure was everything they had hoped for and more, a whirlwind of sights, sounds, and experiences that left them breathless with wonder and gratitude. They wandered through ancient cobblestone streets, marveled at majestic cathedrals and castles, and savored the flavors of local cuisine. They swam in the crystal-clear waters of the Mediterranean, hiked through lush forests and vineyards, and watched in awe as the sun set over iconic landmarks. But amidst the excitement and adventure, it was the quiet moments they treasured most, the simple pleasures of sharing a meal on a sun-dappled terrace, strolling hand in hand through a bustling market, and watching the sunset from a secluded beach. It was in these moments that they felt most connected, most alive, their love for each other and for the world around them shining bright. As they boarded the plane for their journey home, their hearts were full of memories and their minds alive with dreams of future adventures. They returned to Seattle with a renewed sense of purpose and gratitude, their European adventure serving as a reminder of the boundless possibilities that awaited them in the years to come. Back home, they settled into the familiar rhythms of daily life, their European adventure a cherished memory that would live on in their hearts forever. They returned to work and school, to the comforting routines of home-cooked meals and family movie nights, but their hearts were forever changed by the experiences they had shared together, and as they looked towards the future, they did so with a sense of excitement and optimism, knowing that whatever challenges or adventures lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their love and their commitment to building a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. Life, as Annie, Sam, and Jonah soon discovered, was not without its challenges. As the years passed, they encountered their fair share of ups and downs, moments of joy and triumph, but also moments of sadness and struggle. But through it all, they remained steadfast in their love and their commitment to each other, finding strength and solace in the bonds that held them together. One of the greatest challenges they faced came when Sam's job at the architectural firm became uncertain due to economic fluctuations in the industry. The prospect of losing his job was daunting, filling Sam with worry and anxiety about the future. Annie, too, felt the weight of uncertainty, her own career in journalism facing its own set of challenges in an ever-changing media landscape. As they grappled with the uncertainty of their professional lives, they leaned on each other for support, finding solace in the strength of their love and the resilience of their family. They talked openly about their fears and anxieties, sharing their hopes and dreams for the future even as they faced the possibility of difficult decisions and sacrifices. In the end, Sam made the difficult decision to leave his job at the architectural firm in search of new opportunities. It was a choice that filled him with a sense of uncertainty and trepidation, but also a renewed sense of hope and possibility. With Annie's unwavering support, he set out to explore new career paths, drawing on his passion for design and creativity to chart a new course for himself and his family. Meanwhile, Annie faced her own professional challenges as the newspaper industry continued to evolve in the digital age. The rise of online media and social networking platforms presented both opportunities and obstacles for journalists, forcing Annie to adapt to new technologies and storytelling formats while staying true to her journalistic principles and values. But through the challenges and uncertainties of their professional lives, Annie, Sam, and Jonah found strength in their love for each other and their shared commitment to building a life filled with meaning and purpose. They embraced the opportunities that came their way, seizing each new adventure with courage and determination. Despite the challenges they faced, Annie, Sam, and Jonah found joy in the everyday moments that made up their lives together. They reveled in the simple pleasures of family dinners, weekend outings, and lazy Sunday mornings spent curled up on the couch with a good book or a favorite movie. They celebrated milestones and achievements, big and small, cherishing the memories they created together and the bonds that grew stronger with each passing day. They laughed, they cried, they argued, but through it all, they remained united in their love and their shared vision for the future. And as the years passed, their love only deepened, evolving into a bond that was as strong as it was enduring. They weathered storms and basked in sunshine, facing each new day with a sense of gratitude and optimism that carried them through even the darkest of times. For Annie, Sam, and Jonah, the journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, adventures to embark on, and dreams to pursue. But as they looked towards the future, they did so with a sense of confidence and excitement, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, forever and always.